Today we are going to discuss a very important portion of the microeconomics. This concept is very easy but is very important. This is a core economics that has its application in the international trade as well. Okay, so let me start. First let me introduce the topic. Now we will do a comparison between the free market economy and a market with government intervention. What are the welfare implications? Now what are welfare implications? How it is measured? Welfare implications is measured through consumer surplus and the producer surplus. Now what is consumer surplus and producer surplus? Let me draw. First let us consider that we are taking a partial equilibrium framework. What is partial equilibrium framework? It is This is the partial equilibrium framework. This has been given by Marshall, who has said that the quantity of a commodity, the quantity supplied and demand of a commodity depends upon its price only. There are no other factors influencing the market. Okay? So here, as we all know, this is the price, this is the quantity, this is your equilibrium price P0 and this is your equilibrium quantity, that is Q0. Alright? This is your supply curve, this is your demand curve. What is the consumer surplus here? This portion is the consumer surplus, that is portion A. It is the willingness of the consumers to pay, the buyers to pay this price, and this is the area, right? This is the difference between the willingness of the consumer to pay for a commodity and the price it is actually paying. Similarly, what is producer surplus? This portion is the producer surplus, that is the price that the producers are willing to charge minus the price they are actually getting for their sale. Okay, so this is a free market equilibrium. The A portion and B portion together gives us the total surplus, and this portion, this is A plus B, measures the economic welfare, that is the welfare that the society is receiving. Now what happens when the government intervenes? Government can either intervene, government can either intervene through price controls, that is through price ceiling and price floor, or it can influence the prices of the commodities through taxation or subsidies, by imposing taxation and subsidies. First let us take the case of price controls. Say price ceiling has been put by the government. Okay, let me draw it. Let us consider an ice cream market. Alright, this is the demand of the ice cream, this is the supply of the ice cream, this is the price, this is the quantity. Alright, now what has happened? Say that government feels that this equilibrium price is too high. Okay, so it is too high and it should control the price. So now see, if it puts price ceiling here, what will happen? Is this price ceiling binding? No, certainly not, because here the supply is Q1 and the demand is Q2. Here is excess supply, this portion is your excess supply. Now what does excess supply do? Say the supply is 20 and the demand is 10. So what the excess supply is? The 10 portion. Now as there is too much, there is the supply is too much, what will happen? The price will fall, right? According to law of demand, what happens? When there is excess supply, the price will fall. So this P1 price will not be binding, price ceiling will not be binding. The price will move back to the equilibrium position, that is P. Okay, so this is a wrong diagram. price ceiling will be always below the equilibrium price. Remember this. Price ceiling will be below the equilibrium price and the price floor will be above the equilibrium price. What is a price ceiling? Price ceiling is the price that is set by the government beyond which the price cannot rise. Say the government has imposed a price ceiling of rupees 5. Any seller selling it at 6 will be jailed. Okay, they cannot just charge a higher price than 5 when there is a price ceiling. Alright, so what has happened due to the price ceiling? What is the effect on the welfare of the economy? Let us see. This was your equilibrium price. Due to price ceiling, notice that there has been a shortage. That is when the price has decreased. When the price has decreased to P1, the demand has increased because at lower price the buyers want to buy more of the commodity, or the buyers who were earlier not able to buy the commodity will want to buy the commodity. So the demand has increased, right, and the supply has decreased. So here we have a shortage. Okay, what has happened? What has happened to the consumer surplus? Earlier, what was the consumer surplus? This whole portion was the consumer surplus. This one. But is it now the consumer surplus? No, because the supply is up to this portion now. Here, the consumer surplus is A plus B. Why A plus B? Because say, let us take an example of an ice cream parlor. Say 20 are the number of customers and only 10 ice creams are available because there is shortage in the market. Okay, there will be long queues in front of the ice cream market. Those who are able to get the ice cream market have benefited. Their consumer surplus has increased. Why? Because they are getting it at a lower price. Alright, so that is represented by the B portion here. What has happened to the C portion? This part of the consumer surplus has been lost. Why? Because now only 10 persons are able to get the ice cream at the lower price. The other 10 are not able to get the ice cream. Because of long queues, the person who are willing to stand in the long queues for hours, they are getting the ice cream. Also, there can be rationing. The producers may have personal bias. They may think that I will sell it to my relatives only or to my daily customers only. I will not sell them to other person. Okay. So what has happened? There is inefficiency in the market. So the welfare has decreased. C portion of the consumer surplus is lost. What has happened to the producer surplus? Producer surplus is the E part here. This portion, which were earlier the producer surplus, portion of the producer surplus has been lost. B plus D has been lost. Now B has been appropriated by the consumer as the consumer surplus, and D has been lost. Why? Because the producers are not willing to sell the equilibrium price anymore. That is Q portion, Q part. It is not able. It is thinking that the sellers are thinking that why I will sell my supply at such a lower price. They will certainly decrease their the cost of production has increased, so they will certainly think that I will not sell so much at such a lower price. There is no benefit I am getting. So what will they do? They will decrease their supply. So this portion of the producer and the consumer surplus has been lost. This is the welfare loss due to the price control. Now what happens when we have taxes? Let us see that. Does that mean that the policymakers, the intervention of the government is not at all desirable? No, that is not the case. The market economy is always not competitive. Here we have assumed that the market economy is competitive, but always it has not competitive. Also, it has externalities. Say a cigarette market. Okay, in a cigarette market, the supply and demand are intersecting, and the let me draw this. Say in the cigarette market, this is the supply and the this is the demand curve, and this is the supply curve. It is intersecting at price P. Okay. Now, if the government increases the price to this portion, this is desirable for the economy, right? The welfare will increase because the social cost that the others are paying due to the pollution that the cigarette smokers are creating is decreasing, right? So it is not the case that always market intervention is not desirable. Market intervention is sometimes desirable because we have market failures, we have externalities in the market, and also there is no, in the real world we do not have a competitive market scenario. Alright, so now let's move back to the market with government intervention. Before that, let us know about taxes. Now there is a difference between the incidence and the impact of taxes. Impact of taxes is on whom it is levied directly. Say the government is putting a tax on the sellers. That is, the seller have to collect the tax and it has to pay. But does that mean that only the sellers will pay the tax? No. The incidence will be upon the buyers also. The seller, what it will do, it will distribute its burden among the buyers also. Given that the demand curve is not perfectly elastic. If this, what does elasticity means? If the demand curve is perfectly elastic, then when the buyer will see that the price has risen, I will not buy this commodity anymore. It will shift from the commodity. So in that case, the producers will not be able to sell distribute its burden among the buyers as well. Okay, let me show you through a diagram. Say this is the demand again, this is your supply, this is your equilibrium price, and this is your equilibrium quantity. Now what has happened? The sellers, the rupees 1 tax has been levied on the sellers. What will happen? The supply curve will shift towards the left. Why? Because the cost of production for the sellers has increased. For each price, it will now supply a lower quantity, a lower amount of the quantity, right? This. Okay. Now what is the size of the shift? It is equivalent to the size of the tax. Because, let me give you an example. Say rupees 20 was the price of the ice cream. Okay, the seller was producing their ice cream in such a manner that rupees 20, they have this in the mind that rupees 20 is the price of the ice cream. Now if rupees 5 tax has been put on the ice cream, will they will they supply as if the price was 20? No, they will say that the price has decreased 5 rupees, so I have to pay to the government. So they will supply as if the price is only rupees 50. Okay, so the price will fall. Sorry, the price will not fall. The suppliers will supply in such a way that the price has fallen, so they have decreased their supply. Okay, now see the burden of taxation, how it will be distributed. The buyers will pay P1 and the sellers will receive P2. But the equilibrium, you will say that equilibrium price was P0. So why they are paying greater? Because P1 and P2 is the tax. Okay, this is the tax revenue that is appropriated by the government account. Okay, have you understood? I suppose you have understood. I am again saying this. The the supply curve has shifted leftwards because the cost of production has increased, right? Because taxes have been placed. So here the prices that the consumers will pay is P0, P1, because the burden has been shifted, some of the burden has been shifted towards the buyers because the demand curve is not perfectly elastic, right? And some of the portion of the taxes is now paid by the consumers. So whatever price the consumer is paying is not being received by the sellers. They are receiving less than that. So this P1 and P2, this is the tax revenue that the government is appropriating. Now what is happening to the consumer surplus? Let us see. For simplicity, I am not drawing the supply curve anymore. I am just saying that this is the tax revenue. Okay. What is the consumer surplus here now? A is the consumer surplus. Say we do a comparison with and without taxes. Alright. Say this is without tax. Without tax, what was the consumer surplus? Can anyone tell me? A, B, C was the consumer surplus without tax. What was the producer surplus? D, E, F. Total surplus? We know that the summation of consumer surplus and producer surplus give us the total surplus. Okay, so without tax, this is the scenario. Now with tax, what has happened? With tax, A portion is the consumer surplus, B portion of the consumer surplus is being appropriated by the government. Alright, also F is the producer surplus now, and B portion of the producer surplus have been appropriated by the government. So in the total surplus, we have A plus B plus D plus F. Alright. What has happened to the C plus E? C plus E is the deadweight loss due to taxation. Why there is deadweight loss due to taxation? Because the volume of trade has decreased due to taxation. Right? Now at this price, at P1 price, the consumer is only willing to demand Q1, and the producer at such a lower price P2 is willing to supply only Q1. So demand and supply has become equilibrated at B1, where the producers are getting P2 price and the consumers are paying P1 price, and C plus E portion is lost due to the taxation. So we have deadweight loss due to this. So this is the difference between the consumer and the producer surplus. Always remember one thing, that more is the elasticity of the party, that is the buyer, or say the supply curve, say the demand curve is more elastic, then the burden of taxation will be more on the sellers, not the buyers. Okay. Let us give a conclusion to all this. This is your conclusion. That is, there is a welfare loss due to the government intervention. The total surplus is maximized only in the free market. That is the reason why the economists always prefer free market. Why this is so? Because they feel that price acts as a signal for the scarce resources, for the allocation of the scarce resources. There is efficiency when there is free market. That is, the consumers who are valuing the product the more are getting whatever they want to buy. All right, and the sellers who are able to produce the item at the lowest cost are producing the goods. Okay, so this is the conclusion. I hope you have understood.